Okay, the show's with Fernandez here on LaGuardia Whip Radio, and we're meeting on a special day, Tuesday. We usually meet on Wednesdays. We'll have another show tomorrow, but today we wanted to get this show in for this week. We're on Friday. It'll be the 11th day of the 11th month, which is typically Veterans Day, and my guests today are Stephen Clark and Daryl Griffin from departments, respectively, of the Division of Student Affairs, and we're going to talk. They're going to talk about the work they do with veterans at the college as we lead up to this important. It's a federal holiday, right, Stephen?
That's correct.
It's a federal. We were talking earlier about how CUNY has to figure out what days to take, and this year Veterans Day lost to Columbus Day, right?
Correct.
So I told you a little bit about the show and the format. So I wanted to start by giving the two of you a chance to, talk a little bit about your backgrounds. If you want to talk, about your service and also your studies before coming to LaGuardia. So who would like to go first?
Stephen, go ahead. I'll let you take the lead.
All right. I came to LaGuardia in 2015 and hired as the director for Veteran Services. Prior to that, I was the university director at CUNY for Military and Veteran Services and was the associate director prior to being the director. During that time, I served as the education subcommittee chairperson for the Army out of Fort Hamilton, and I was vice president of the National Association of Veteran Program Administrators and legislative chairperson. I served as a first vice president and second president of New York State Advisory Council for Military Educators, and when the opportunity came up to work at LaGuardia, where no one had saw, that's what drew me over here, to work more closely with student veterans, not just from the central office perspective.
I mean, are you a veteran, Stephen?
I didn't serve in uniform, no.
Just make the assumption. Daryl, did you want to take a turn?
Thank you. And Hugo, thank you so much for inviting me onto this. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk about myself, what I've done, and also our student veterans. So thank you for the opportunity. And so I'm a veteran. I did serve in the Marine Corps. I served in the Marines from 2004 to 2000 in the infantry. I was deployed for 2 years in Iraq. Then after that, it's very difficult going back into the civilian world trying to figure out which way is up. And so I floated around for a little bit, and eventually, was it 4 years? 4 years after I separated from the military, decided to go back to school, and I went to BMCC to pursue my associates in criminal justice, and then eventually moved on to John Jay, where I got my in criminal justice. The entire time, I was active in very active in the student role, as far as making sure that they're aware of our presence and what we can do to just move veterans into a position of succeeding after the military.
All right. You used your GI Bill to do that too, right?
Absolutely. The GI Bill is a huge benefit that veterans have if they do their service, do their time honorably. They are eligible for the post 9/11, which all the way up to had I not started working, I would have gotten into a master's, almost completed a master's with the GI Bill. So if veterans make the most of this opportunity, which they can do better at LaGuardia than almost every other school because we have an academic calendar that allows them to at an accelerated pace. Absolutely, yeah. The GI Bill. I mean, as their academic advisor, I try my best to make sure that they're taking advantage of this opportunity to come out of the military and succeed.
And the thing about
Yeah. Well, but sorry. Did see? I just want Jamie, Jamie Riccio, who's the station director, is actually serving as our engineer today on her laptop from home, and she was just saying that there's a little bit something funky going on with your microphone, Daryl, but I don't think there's anything we can do about it now because you're using whatever those earbuds.
Use the headphones?
Well, I don't know, because then we might get feedback. I don't know. You want to? What would happen if? Let's try it. Let's use the microphone from the computer.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, sounds better. And we're not getting any echoes, so let's go with that now. Sorry, Stephen, I interrupted you.
as Daryl alluded, the actors can be daunting. To the GI Bill, in session 1, 2 courses in session 2. No other student, as Daryl mentioned too. One of the elements that we brought to LaGuardia was to ease that transition from military service to civilian and campus life, because as Daryl well knows, it's not a manual environment, right? You're not out in the field. It's, that transition sometimes it's difficult because the term I can use at times is academic atrophy can set in. It's not a natural occurrence, and it is a substantial amount of money that they do receive. We don't want them, as we say, ask them if they're going to major in their basic allowance for housing. We want them to make the best of this opportunity for their futures. So we develop programming and the like. And Daryl's a really good example because we started. This is when he was at BMCC. We had that academic excellence breakfast, and Daryl was our keynote speaker because he outperformed all the other veterans academically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Steve, since you're not a veteran, what made you decide to work with veterans or get involved with the service?
Sure. So my dad, after MIT, went into the Army, and I had an uncle who served in World War II as a lieutenant, and my Uncle Jerry from South Boston was in the Screaming Eagles in Vietnam. So I had a familiarity with the environment. And subsequent to military service, my father worked on electrical conductivity and saline solutions with submariner applications. We were living in Connecticut, and so I had field trips to Groton every now and again. So I, can understand rank and file, and veteran, military personnel wear their resume on their uniforms in large measure. And we're talking about transitioning. That's not there when they come to civilian life. So we do some military cultural competency trainings with this is at the individual who's coming into
yeah, I remember I had taken a workshop, and we're kind of I want to get back to you, but I'll just mention it because since you brought this up, is that one of the issues is that veterans don't necessarily self-identify. That a faculty member could have a veteran in the classroom, and unless you make a point of asking, you might not know, and you're not, or necessarily know that for whatever reasons, if they need anything. At one point I was doing an activity where I would ask students, I would say like, finish this sentence for me. I wish my teacher knew, and that was their opportunity to folks who were in the reserves, and they could get called up and miss classes, and I would have to make allowances for that. But again, so is that your experience as well for both of you, that veterans don't necessarily self-disclose at the college?
Yeah, a lot of veterans that I speak to, so we have around 80 student veterans. I would say my interaction with people that are coming on the regular, it's like 8 to 10 students, right? So not a lot of veterans are actually coming out. I mean, of course, I'm reaching out to them as their academic advisor, keeping them on track, creating all of their educational plans and everything. But as far as ones coming out, participating in our events and identifying as veterans, it's a very small amount. And when I was a student veteran, like I said, this is 4 years after I got out of the military. I understood my veteran director, my coordinator over at BMCC. I worked in his office, so he's like, I need you to be the face of these students. And so I took that on my shoulders as self-identifying, coming out in every class, like you said, go around yourself right away. I'm a veteran. Any veteran that's in the class, need help, come down to the veterans office. So it's a huge, I don't want to say burden, but it's a huge thing that they pick up identifying, and then helping other veterans that are kind of lost, don't know what services, what benefits, what's available to them, connecting them to those things. So absolutely, self-identifying, coming out and saying, hey, I'm a veteran, this is my service, it's nothing to be ashamed of. But when I said 2008, I wanted nothing to do with the military. I left the country for 3 months. And it's because I was looking for a job every place I applied. I was corporal in the Marine Corps, right? I was the head of checkpoints inside of Baghdad, the green zone. I had all this experience. I tried applying for a position as a security guard at a retirement, and they told me I was overqualified. So, so it's like you get out and you feel nobody even cares about this service. So why so you kind of just you want to get past it. You want to move past it. And so a lot of people don't self-identify because they're just done with that period. Or they say, maybe they say, okay, now I need to establish my life after the military. I don't want to harp on it, or I don't want to make it something more than it is. So yeah, just connecting the community is huge. Just to connect a veteran that way. Like I said, there's so many services. A lot of veterans come out with maybe hidden injuries or disabilities to get them service for. So identifying as a veteran, it means there's no, we're still that band of brothers or sisters, so like I said, brotherhood, where we can rely on each other. You hear about some of the most incredible feats of war, through combat. You think about the Frozen Chosen, right? They said what got them through that war. The Frozen Chosen, one of the most brutal conflicts in the history of the Marine Corps. So the only thing that got me through it was the guy to the left and right of me. And so continuing with that feeling of that is so important in our community to help each other get through the suicide rate in veterans. It was peaking. I think maybe back in 2013, 14, it was peaking at 22 veterans a day getting suicide. I think maybe it's gone down, maybe a few, but there's still a large amount of veterans committing suicide, and you just want to be there. You want to be there for them because you said that it's a statistic that hits home with me, and you want to be there for if so, because you don't know when you had enough and the right outlet to reach out to. So connecting them with resources, just being there for them. So huge. It's huge. Self-identifying, and then like I said, being a part of the community.
Okay, I want to get Stephen back in the conversation, but I just wanted to ask you real quick. The Frozen Chosen refers to what battle? What?
Korea.
You said the Frozen. The Korean War. That's what I was guessing. I know it's pretty cold, and that's not just not even just from watching MASH, but people don't realize how far North Korea really is. So let's talk a little bit about some of these the roles the two of you have had here at the college, and you can talk. Stevie, you can talk a little bit about coming here, but what are some of the roles that you've had since arriving at LaGuardia?
Programs, trying to develop support programs to enhance both the understanding of general population, students, faculty, and this is repeating oneself to an extent, but it is critical to get phase, and we've tried a few approaches. Daryl and I have. One was we worked with the philosophy department, then Chairman John Chafee, Sherry Carr and Shannon Proctor in that course, critical thinking, and we would funnel veterans into the same section, and we had some pretty good results with that. There were guys who hadn't seen each other since they first went through boot camp together. So little things like that can get you traction, and they're generally a little older. A lot have families. You know, LaGuardia is a little different than most colleges, but still, it's an element that is cautious to reach out, and particularly we find that female veterans really shy away. Um, they don't much because it's a male-dominated environment. So just identifying women can be daunting. There's some issues that they have to deal with, and so they stay on the sidelines quite a bit. That's been your experience, Daryl?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. And we've brought in people like was it Pete Kilner, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Kilner from West Point, philosophy PhD, talking on moral injury, not just post-traumatic stress disorder, but someone who serves in an agency or in the military and they're trained to use their weapon. That's that's acceptable. But on the civilian side, so they find that the recent studies have that veterans have a moral injury, that that their morality has been shifted as a function of being in service, and particularly being under fire.
Gary, you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you've done at the college, either with or without Stephen?
Yeah. So my role at LaGuardia is I'm the academic advisor for student veterans. So which is huge. Myself being a veteran using the GI Bill, I can help them. I understand it. I can help them. You've got this benefit before you. You can, to maximize it, you can get up to a master's degree. Right? And then there's a whole bunch of other benefits that can really help them get master's, bachelor, whatever they'd like to go. There's some resource out there that we can tap into to help them achieve those educational goals. So I have a capacity as their academic advisor. Also, the Veterans Resource Center on campus in the C building, C371. I manage that office where we've got proof interns, they're social work interns that are just if a veteran needs an ear to talk to, just to unwind. So we have those social workers in there. We have positions available for students to come in there and work, be their mentors to other veterans. And what we do in the resource center is we try to, like I said, build that community of support, right? Through events. Every Friday we get together. We think, whether it's we've got free access through the CUNY Arts program. We get free access to so many things around the city where we can go out and whether it's jazz at the Lincoln Center or any of these places where we can get into for free. Let's take advantage of it. So we participate in the CUNY program, and just a way of connecting. And the arts, for someone who might be dealing with mental health issue or just isolation, the arts is a great way just to get out, and just enjoy the city that we live in. We live in a great city. Some people might not think that, but it's, I think we live in a great city. Just to get out and enjoy. I think last week we went to the Met, right? The Met, it was a great time. The weather's been beautiful, so it was great to just get out there and enjoy. Other people, some veterans that have all were able to come out and said it's good just to get to connect and be a part of a community. And so I don't want to say our bond is thicker than any other group's bond, but they'll say it's a brotherhood, right? And so being there for the students, which they're my students as well, but beyond that, these are my brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? And I look at them as that way. And so I mean, I don't want to say that we're closer than any other relationship, but there is a underlying bond, that keeps us close. And so we do all sorts like that. We bring services from around the city, the VA, all different types of veteran service organizations we bring into the resource center, so that way veterans don't have to go over all around the city trying to figure out what services are available to them. We bring them into the VRC. That way they can, hey, if it's in class, I can catch, what might be available for me. As well as they come drop off all their flyers and all that. That way, it's right there. You have a flyer, or stop by and ask, hey, what do they have to say? We had one of our former came in, and she for Department of Homeland Security, and she was doing a hiring event for Homeland Security, and so she came in and gave a presentation, and it was incredible. This was such a rare opportunity. Somebody from Georgia flew to LaGuardia to go to this event, and then flew back to Georgia that day. Having connections like that this was through relationships that we built as me and Steven. We built these relationships with students and stayed in contact. Like I said, they're with our population of students. And like I said, I'm sure there are relationships like this in other areas, but having that bond of military service, does kind of tie us a little closer together. So we have, things like that. We also, with, a big part of the VRC is to, hit 3 areas, right? 3 areas. The first area being your transition out of the military into civilian world, getting you connected with every single resource possible. The next, like I said, is building that community of friendships, of support, a support circle. And then the last one is connecting them outside to their 4-year college. So we get, who do we have? University, Manhattan, Columbia. We're working on Columbia, John Jay, Queens College. All invited us to their campuses for private tours, which we had quite a few veterans show up. So connecting them to that next step. That way, they don't get blindsided, right? Whereas my last semester, I know where I'm going, and they're really excited to get on these campuses and see, what they might not have known was available just here in New York City. Manhattan College is one of my favorite colleges. Just to know that there's a campus presence, a feeling like that here in the city. A lot of our students are made by how close it is and how much of a campus feel it has.
Well, I think that there are certain CUNYs which have a designation of being, I don't know whether it's veteran friendly or veteran. What's the term they use?
Yeah, veteran friendly. Yeah.
Is that the name that they use? Really?
Well, yeah,
I mean, I know John Jay is one of them, for example, that they provide good services for veterans.
Right. You want to talk about it?
I know you're smiling. You're smiling. Steven, you held up something in your hand there when he was talking about. What was that you held up there?
That's her card.
The woman's card, right?
Yeah. And
right.
She was something else. She was studying veterinary science here.
Oh, really?
As well as up at Fordham, what was it? Sociology, right?
Right.
So she was doing that, and
simultaneously.
She worked in Gitmo Bay. She was a high-speed woman, still is. We've had a lot of success. Some of our students who really bogged down, like you mentioned, Paul. They went to Columbia, St. John's. We really value that. And now that I get them at the first point of contact, start to give them a little degree map understanding of what they're going to encounter academically, and it's supported by Daryl. We reinforce. I read the DD 214, their discharge document, and because I've taught graduate school of disability history, I can easily have that transitional conversation with someone, and get them into maybe the right chapter for voc rehabilitation. Give them over to the accessibility services office and let them know there's not a stigma. They're not alone. So if we get them from the very start, and it's an honor to work with these guys. Some of the funniest people I've ever met. I tell you the truth, got a great sense of humor.
Yeah, I've made some remarks. And we can talk about this because we're coming close to the half-hour mark. But I remember when I was in the Senate. I mean, first of all, what I always find fascinating is that people are trying to develop soft skills. And one of those skills, it's not even that soft, it's working well with others. People's ability to work with, in teams, which we are told that is what, folks hiring want. That's what employers want. They want somebody who can work in a team environment. And, I mean, it was kind of funny because we got rid of what I felt was one way, which is athletics. Obviously, when the athletic programs had disappeared for this 5-year interval, and now they're back. But I also say, the service is where you learn that skill, like you were talking about, depending on, your brothers in arms, right? And I don't know, and we don't have to get too political here, but I mean, what are your feelings about selective service and the draft versus the volunteer army? In 2 minutes or less, so we can do a station break.
Well, I respect their choice to, enlist.
Right.
There's some pros and cons on, the development of the military today. The numbers that are kind of going down the downward slope for a number of reasons, but
right.
But it's a conversation that shouldn't be heard of, right? We've been in conflict in OIF, and Operation Inherent Resolve for how long now, Daryl? 15 years or more?
15 years, right?
OIF conflict?
Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Oh, right.
Enduring Freedom, Inherent Resolve.
Inherent.
Yeah.
In Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
Right, and we're doing it with volunteer forces as opposed to folks. I think it's problematic when we have legislators who are sent, vote for something, but they don't have any skin in the game. Like, let's say their own child in active duty. But
well, in the book of the Congress's book, they list the bills that didn't go through, and one of them was if you vote for war. That didn't fly.
That didn't fly. It's 1:29. Let's do a quick station break. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio. And my guests today are Stephen Clark and Daryl Griffin of the Admissions and Advisement departments, respectively, of the Division of Student Affairs, the work with veterans here at the college as we lead up to the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, which, demarcates Veterans Day. And Stephen was talking about this earlier. That's when the armistice in World War I went into effect, the ceasefire. And then in what Congress did you say, 83rd, 84th Congress, it was made a federal holiday. Right?
Yeah. Having been through World War II and the Korean War, that's when they developed Veterans Day. They're called Alternative Veterans Day. Yeah.
And I think what's interesting too is that for people, because they talk about different periods of time when the education industry, the education industrial complex, as we could call it, really took off. And obviously after World War II, when you had all these veterans returning and they put in the GI Bill, it changed the face of education. When you had that number of people going into higher education, and obviously after each war, folks moving in. So I don't think people know the integral relationship that, the education, whatever you want to call it, industry has in its ties with, former veterans and the military.
Parallels the World War II generation is with regard to education. The majority of those who volunteered were already in college or had plans to go into college until they decided to serve the nation.
I always think about that line from, I don't want to bring up military movies, but Platoon, where he says, the kids say like, oh yeah, I was in the college, but I felt I wanted to come because not only poor kids should be and sort of see, and he looks. I think it was Keith David looks at him and he says, like, only a rich person would think that way to find themselves to make a decision like that. But I think we find that all the time that there are. I mean, I know that we have recruiters that are around the college, and a lot of students choose to go into the military because of the GI Bill and because of the fact that they're can come out and they can help them pay for school. But every time that there has been something like, let's say, 9/11, there are a lot of folks who are signing up because they believe in the country, they believe in defending it, particularly when we are attacked. So, and there's plenty of folks like that in the military.
Yeah, were you in New York when you enlisted? You a New York resident or Pennsylvania?
No, yeah. I was not a New York resident.
So
High school. I was going to high school in Pennsylvania.
I sometimes profile it this way. Consider why someone from New York City joined the military. I think they can be academically or economically unprepared and couldn't find a job. So the process is take the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test, to determine what their military occupational specialty would be after boot camp, and from boot camp to advanced individual training. So that's a little insight into how it goes along.
That determines what type of role they'll play, right?
That's correct. Well, it's sometimes termed differently, but commonly MOS, military occupational specialty.
That's one of the things I remember taking a workshop about working with veterans, and that's one of the questions you're supposed to ask. Your MOS. Now that you remind me. So what are some of the things that are going on for veterans that you're involved with right now as we're moving into this important day that's coming up at the end of the week? I know, Daryl, you're going to be busy all week. What are you doing?
Yeah, so well, all this week we've got events happening throughout CUNY. Tomorrow, Queens College is having a veterans luncheon on their campus. The following day, John Jay is going to be having a Marine Corps cutting. So the Marine Corps birthday is the day before Veterans Day. Everyone that's in the Marine Corps birthday is like the #1 holiday of the year. So we're going to celebrate the Marine Corps' birthday with John Jay, and then Friday we have been invited to walk in the Veterans Day Parade, which is goes down Fifth Avenue. So we'll be in the Veterans Day Parade on Friday. So yeah, like I said, almost a whole week of events around the city that we can participate in. And then of course, every year there are free handouts from Applebee's, Red Lobster, all those different places. So I'll share that with all my students of every place they can possibly get a free meal or a free coffee. But it's a great day to celebrate sacrifice of our men and women that defended this country. So thanks again. Thank you for having us on, giving us a chance to talk about it. And then later in the month, we're going to be showing. I've worked with the theater department or the performing arts. I don't know, LPAC, I think. We're going to be showing the movie Glory in the Little Theater. I think that is November 21st. We're going to be showing the movie Glory. Glory is just one of the more military themed movies that I just love. We're going to show that at the end of the month.
And we've worked with the theater department on a couple of occasions, Daryl and I have. There was a production, Water by the Spoonful, and the individual character was in either the Marine Corps or the Army, and was at a checkpoint in Iraq, and they couldn't communicate with their what he thought was a combatant, and he shot the guy, and so he goes through that cycle of being haunted by him. So We watched the production with a bunch of people. We brought in the book, Shooting Ghosts, right, about a combat photographer and a whatever branch they were in, Marine Corps or Army. And then myself and Daryl, and I think someone, we had a Q&A afterwards to, you know, to engage the audience. We've done a few things in that regard.
Yeah. That's what we call what's called friendly fire, right? When someone is killed by someone on their own side.
No, the individual who was killed was Iraqi, and they just couldn't. They didn't speak the same language.
Oh, so
Yeah.
You're right, fire is bright when you shoot one of your own. Right.
yeah, when someone's killed by accident by their own troops. Glory, correct me if I'm right. That's about the battle at Fort Wagner with
Fort Wagner, yes.
with the all black regiment that was led by Shaw,
right,
from Boston.
Yes, it's a great,
Yeah.
great story.
Great film.
Great film, great, right? Some really good acting. I mean, it speaks to everything about the sacrifice, right? Of just putting aside individual and all working towards one goal. I think that is something that is huge in the military, right? We have to get rid of our own personal needs, and we all fight towards this one common goal. And I think that's some of the part of the difficulty veterans have transitioning. They go from this unit, this team mentality, to now outside in the civilian world where it's man, right? Everyone live for themselves, and they lose that kind of that team feeling, and it's hard to connect, just connect again in just basic relationships. It's hard, you don't trust people, you're second guessing everybody, you're always thinking of what do we know, what intention does this person have? So it's difficult, which is why our resource center, is so I wish more veterans would come out and connect. That way we can just be there for them. Through whatever they're going
It also, I think that film also deals with, though, the treatment of the black troops, how they weren't being paid equally. I think at one point they chose to refuse pay. And I mean, the Army, the role of minorities in service have played a role in the civil rights movement here in the United States. I always remember Happy Chandler, who was the commissioner of baseball, and when the question of Jackie Robinson playing came up, and I think he referred to African Americans fighting in World War II, and if they can fight in Iwo Jima, they can play baseball. And I don't know if what the situation is at this point. I mean, I know gender has been an issue that's been evolving in the military as well. I don't know if any of that comes up when things have changed over the years, and how a lot of these folks who did serve in the military came back, particularly like when they went back to Jim Crow South after everything they'd done to fight for freedom in a foreign war, would find themselves fighting for freedom here in the United States as well. So it's a very powerful film.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was very close contact, if I understand it correctly.
Oh yeah, there was just hand to hand, right? And there was no surrendering, because they couldn't surrender. Being African soldiers, they would have been killed immediately, right? Yeah.
And even further up the road, there was the Tuskegee Airmen.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And
another great film.
Roscoe Brown was the president of Bronx Community College. He was a
former Tuskegee Airman.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Wow.
A lot of history at the university with the military. There's a display that we cobble together each November for Veterans Month, if you will, and it's stationed outside the library. You get a chance to go by and see it.
One of the cases?
Yeah.
Here's a question for you, because I heard you talking about recommending folks for services. because I know that there's more than one agency that provides services for veterans on campus, and I know that the President's Council had talked a lot about getting all those agencies to work together. How is that going? Do all the different disparate agencies that serve veterans work together, providing services at this point?
At the college?
At the college, yeah.
Within students?
Well, see, that's the thing is that I know the Student Affairs has, but I think I don't want to. I forgot the name. Some of the maybe they're not here anymore. At one point, we had as many as 4 different agencies providing services for veterans at the university, and the goal was to try to get them because each one provided certain services. Some did some things better than others, and it was a matter of where would a veteran thrive the best. But maybe there aren't. Maybe those agencies have gone. We're coming up on the last quarter hour, and I was going to ask, what are some of the plans the two of you have for the future of services for veterans at the college?
Daryl and I are like-minded to have the resource center be reestablished with some personnel that allow us to further develop some of the things we've done and intending to do. I participated in the National Endowment for Humanities grant entitled The Meanings of War, and that was just before the pandemic hit. And Hugo, we're thinking of putting together a photography exhibit by veterans, and having the professor from City College, Peaslyak, who did the soundtracks for Iraq. So there's some things that we want to take off the shelf and dust off that we didn't get the opportunity to over the past couple of years. It's difficult. One thing is difficult. You can't really recruit veterans. There's seldom a college fair, and going to the VA isn't always the easiest thing to do, even for a veteran, right, Daryl? So, bring support services. We've done. We worked with the health center. They did coloring books. Some soft things, and we have the capacity to bring it all back. The Battle Buddy Center. It's the largest space at LaGuardia. It's the largest space around the university, and we outfit it with furniture and equipment, and really it's a hub, and we want to have that be longer. So we're underway.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with and just be in agreement with Stephen. Right now, services are a little fragmented. Right, you go here for this, go here for that, and there was a time when everything was right there in the resource center. And I think this is the best way to service our veterans, right? We've got other services for different populations where everything is located right there in that office, right? So
What office are we talking about? What number? What office are we talking about? Resource Center?
370. The
E371. Okay.
See, Charlie 371, right? So I said, if we've got for other groups of students, we got something where everything is located right there in that office. We should be doing the same service for our student veterans,
Right.
where hey, I can go right to the resource center. The whoever's in charge there, the academic advisor is right there, and all the services for for our population of student veterans can be right there in the office. And that's the best way to take care of this group of students, because then through that we can also right now we've all got separate roles, and we kind of got to stay inside our lane. When we're all working together on the same page, right, we can collaborate together. I just remember some of the programmings that Stephen has alluded to, right, with working with their department, right, water by the spoonful, and just bring it in. Services. This is the type of programming and support veterans be having, right, where everything is centralized, and there's one individual that is in charge of veteran services, and then he's kind of overseeing the entire thing. that's as far as the services go. That's where I stand in agreement with Steve. And what I would like to see continue to come out of LaGuardia is right now, as as we alluded to, there's a whole bunch of things going on through the week at different campuses that I'm collaborating with. I'd love to see something developed here for LaGuardia, and I'm working with Student Life, Student Affairs on getting a budget for student veterans to have events. But as it stands right now, there is no operating budget, so that's why we do a lot of the CUNY Arts program, all free, right? Events at other campuses. We're piggybacking on what they're doing. But I'd love to see. I'd love to, in whichever way, through Student Life, requesting the funding, just take the first step in supporting their veterans instead of, I don't know if they're waiting for it. Maybe if the population of students times, then we'll show some support. I'd love to see the school take the first step and say, you know what, of our 80 veterans, here's whatever to take care of them. That's what I'd love to see from the school. And as far as in the workings inside the office, like I said, areas that I focus on are mental health, community building, relationship building. So I'd love to see some type of peer mentoring program coming out of that. One area that I was researching before we got hit with the pandemic was environmental therapy, of connecting with nature, right? Connecting outdoors. So I'd love to get some type of like maybe go. There's some hiking trails upstate. Take a group of veterans upstate. Take them hiking on some of those trails. The therapy through nature. Yeah, right.
I think that was one of the agencies providing services for veterans in the past. Outward Bound is usually for kids to get out but I think Outward Bound might have been involved with veterans as well. Have you guys tried to I mean, I know it's impossible to keep a club going, but Veterans Club, if you have a club, you can draw down student activity fees, right?
A club.
We went to Washington, D.C. with a busload one year. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, really, it's kind of the push has to come from the students, right? And
right. That's the problem.
The student push hasn't been there recently. But right now we do have someone that is trying to formalize the club again, put in the funding for it, and the biggest part is that it's on the student. You know what I mean? The students got.
I do know because
gotta get together.
I know of two different clubs that are trying to go, and the mentors can only do so much. It usually takes one kind of charismatic figure with a lot of time or energy to be the center to kind of get everybody organized, and it's ebbs and flows. One year you've got a good club, next year you don't, because people graduate. You got to wait until the Messiah appears again.
We had access when we started up at the Resource Center, something called the reporting fee. So the VA on the calendar year will send the college between $7 and $15. It'll vary year to year. Part-time public law 111377 that identifies how those funds are to be spent. And one of the two ways is to support veterans programming.
What's the other way?
The other one is for professional development for the certifying official. It's a small resource, but it's far more than what's available right now.
Yeah, look, everybody talks about this. I mean, I went to somebody, a vice president, asked them for monies to do something that would support their mission, and they sent me to somebody that works for them, saying, "I'll go get," and that person didn't have any money, and the vice president knew that, and so it's not unique to veterans, but you would think that again, services for folks who've done service for the country, right?
Yeah, and going back a number, 2010, there was a legislative campaign by the university, headed up by retired Command Master Chief Wilfred Cotto, to garner funds from the state. And pardon me, we were successful and pulled in $1.25 million, which was distributed amongst the colleges for veterans programming specifically. And the funding formula panned out where LaGuardia gets the highest allocation. But for 5 years, they never used it until we developed the resource center. We were able to garner some money for a battle buddy center through the New York State through a New York State agency that we've been able to keep our hands on, and purchase some more equipment and other resources. Run out pretty soon. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I know that it's interesting because people who follow, defense is about half of every tax dollar spent in the United States. People know this. I think another quarter is to pay down the debt, and then we fight over that last quarter. But I feel that with all the money that's going into that, I would actually support increase for providing of services for the veterans who come back. I mean, we do a lot to get folks in. We do a lot to train them. There's, all the support when they're in active duty. And then, of course, I mean, the GI Bill is great, but I think you both know, anybody who's been listening, that there's plenty more work to do. And I'd like to see a lot more money go for service. I will say this one thing. As my brother-in-law who is in Vietnam and takes good advantage of the VA at this point. He goes to the VA at least. But it comes. The reason he does that is because he got old, and everything stopped working, and he needed the services. So it's an arc. I had my former father-in-law, who died, who's in the Battle of the Bulge. He was captured. He was a POW. He wouldn't talk about the war for years, and then finally, when he was older, somebody came in to interview him about the Battle of the Bulge, and he opened up, and suddenly he embraced it. So I think there's an arc to this kind of experience for veterans, and the two of you had the toughest job because you're working with them right out of the service. Like you said, you took 4 years and you did not want to identify, and so it takes time for people to come to terms with that, whether that is a sort of grief cycle of sorts or a post-traumatic cycle. That our kids come to us already with PTSD who are just New York citizens, but if they are also veterans, that just ratchets up. So I want to commend you both for the work you're doing. I know it's like pulling teeth to get folks to identify and then to get them the services to provide them. But I'll always support you in any way I can.
We really appreciate it. Yeah, it was you initiated this idea, so. Excellent.
Well, yeah, I like to do this once every year. And I do this. I'll do a Memorial Day service. Figure out who we can bring on for that. But we've got about 5 minutes before the show's over, and I want to save like a minute and a half for taps. So, are there any last things you want to say, or anybody you'd like to thank that you work with, or the work you're doing?
I'll thank Daryl.
Yeah, so Stephen, when he was in his former role, I was a student, and I owe Stephen Clark credit for a lot of my professional development, connecting with resources. So Stephen has been a huge part of getting me to where I am today. So thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome, Daryl. Thank you.
So anything else you want to add? We got a couple of minutes of any last things you feel that we haven't mentioned or said that you'd like to add or bring in to anybody's attention before we go.
I'll throw in, just post something on Facebook about thank you for our veterans. Find a veteran that you know and reach out to them personally and thank them. I think it goes a lot further than just. It's kind of like a check in the box, just saying thank you for your service through social media. Reach out to those that that are service members, and just let them know. I think they'll appreciate it more than you can imagine. So, just be more present.
than what today's society is.
That's like I said. I will. I do typically I call my brother-in-law, like I said before, who was in Vietnam, and my nephew who was in Iraq. He might have been somebody that went past your checkpoint. He was a sniper with. You said the Screaming Eagles. That's the 101st, right?
That was one of my uncles. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I think he was airborne as well. Who's at Bragg? Who's stationed at Fort Bragg? Is it the 101st? I believe so. Anyhow, he was one of those. But he struggled a lot when he came back. He could have gone back to Bragg and been a trained people, and for whatever reasons, he thought it was just too easy in the Army. So he got out and he found himself incarcerated for about 5 years, and finally got out of that and has been struggling. But they finally came through. He's gotten full disability. So there is, there's my sister would say there is a God, but she's a Baptist, so she says that. But anyhow, I call them both and check in. And my brother, he'll tell you the stories about the Battle of Quezon. My nephew, not as much. I guess it'll take time for him. But I call them both to thank them. I never did service. I don't know. If I'd have known, as Forrest Gump would say, what is your job in this Army, Sergeant? Gump, do whatever you say, Sergeant.
You're a genius, Gump.
That was not me. It's at 18. I don't know. God knows what would have happened to me. But I just want to thank the both of you for being on this show today, and I want to thank everybody for watching. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And my guests today have been Stephen Clark and Daryl Griffin of the Admissions and Advisement Departments of, respectively, of the Division of Student Affairs. And we've been talking about the work they do with veterans here at the college as we lead up to the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month this Friday, celebrating Veterans Day. Gentlemen, thank you both for everything you do. And I want to thank our station manager, Jamie Richo, who's behind the scenes, and gratefully her computer did not crash today because my engineer, Mr. Pope, is manning an election station. So take us out with Taps. Bye-bye.